Hi, welcome to Infinite Leaders Live. I'm Lewis Keynes, and our why is simple. We want to be better educators and better humans. We want to support and encourage infinite learning, regardless of rank, role, or responsibility, for everybody hopefully to be willing to listen and to learn. I'm joined by my pal as ever, Alan Dunstan.
Yeah, thank you, Lewis, and really looking forward to diving deeper into understanding how leaders with an infinite mindset translate across to their teams. We want to focus on the things you don't get taught at university or on any courses. We want real life lessons from real life people with real life experience.
And as ever, we're learning, we record live and there'll be a few mistakes as we go through. I think the last one, there were a few dogs barking. That's pretty standard, but hopefully they'll be quiet through this. We'd love to hear your feedback, so please get in touch. We fully believe in what we're doing and we want to get better too. So if there's anything that you spot that you think we can work on, tell us. Equally, anything you think we do well, we'd love to hear that as well. You can find us on Instagram, on YouTube, and also Alan and I are on Twitter. And all the information about our podcast and about everything else that we do is at theinfinitelearners.com. So listen, learn, and please share this content with your colleagues. And Alan, introduce our guest, please.
Yeah, thanks again. Get your pens and papers ready. There's going to be some absolute gems of wisdom coming out of the show today. Steve Waide is a UEFA A licensed football coach working for the FA as the PE unit manager in the UK. He has done the hard yards both academically and professionally, having taught and led in schools for 7 years and obtaining a master's degree in physical education before moving into his current role. Steve is always learning and developing his career, and he's currently the first team coach at Tadcaster Albion in step 4 of the football pyramid. Welcome to the show, Steve, and if you could just start us off by telling our listeners a little bit about your fantastic journey.
Thanks for the introduction. In the education journey-wise, so I met Lewis a long time ago when I started out working in schools as a teaching assistant at Boston Spa in Wetherby, around just outside Leeds. That involved a year working with autistic children, 2 children in particular. Learned a great deal, not just about autism and working as a teaching assistant, but just education, being part of lessons, seeing different teachers across different subjects teach, and taking nuggets of information and thinking, yeah, I'd like to do it that way, or perhaps I'd change that, or I wouldn't want to be doing that. So it was an invaluable year. Did my PGC then following that in Manchester, and got a role at St Thomas of Becket's in Wakefield, which I absolutely loved as a school. There 2 years, both years were temporary contracts, so it got renewed after 1 year. Second year, they were making cuts, unfortunately, because I were a temporary contract, I was the first to go, which inadvertently made me apply for a head of PE role. Obviously, jobs in PE, as anyone listening to this will know, are sometimes hard to come by and pretty rare and scarce, and there wasn't much around at that point. So I went for this head of PE role and started going through the interview process and thinking, hold on a minute, I might have a chance here. Got the job, and that was head of PE at South Leeds, which was and still is a very tough environment to work in, but genuinely believed that if I brought some of the stuff from Beckett's to there to really influence PE, that could have an impact on the wider school, which I can touch on later, but I feel it definitely did, and we did some really positive things in physical education there. An opportunity came up while I was doing my UEFA B licence at that point. Just Stuart spoke to me and said about some physical education roles with the FA, which obviously I wasn't aware of. I didn't know they had a PE unit, and most people still don't. And I went for this job not really knowing what it was. I just thought it was an opportunity to try and combine football and education, which are my 2 main passions. And I was again successful in that role, in obtaining that role. Got it, and within a year of that, I became the manager of the East region, which is pretty much Leeds and Yorkshire across to the East Coast, and then down to like Watford and across. So it's a large region where we work with ITT teachers in primary and secondary. We work with any coach or individual that is going to be in front of a child delivering physical education. We work with all the professional football clubs and the coaches they send into schools to upskill them to teach rather than coach. So yeah, it's a varied job, but one that I absolutely love, and it's sort of like culminated everything that I've been doing in the past into one role.
How important were those few years in I know South Leeds School, and I know it well. I've been there, and it is a tough environment. How important were those years in shaping you as a leader, as a professional, as a teacher?
I think probably the most important years. I'd say the years prior to that, I was taking stuff in, and this gave me a bit of a blank. And the head teacher at the time, a gent called Mark Doyle, was very clear with me and honest with me in saying that this is a blank canvas. Come in and try things. That he believed as well that PE could be a massive driver for the school because of the demographics and the type of pupils we had who did have massive interest in sport and stuff. So it gave me a chance to implement my own ideas, but obviously it was implementing my own ideas in an environment that had not become stale, that's not the right word, but it got fixed in its ways, and this is, our pupils can't do that, our pupils can't do this, and I came in with very much a different mindset. They can do whatever thing they can do, and we can't put a ceiling on anything. So working in that environment gave me the opportunity to recruit people, write people, make mistakes sometimes, particularly around leadership, because again, the team was existing. The team I came into, the head of PE, who had been head of PE prior, hadn't been given an interview for my role, but was staying. So that was naturally a tough gig as well. I had to try and get her on side and tell her my views, but naturally she was quite frustrated, and it wasn't a reflection on me, she was frustrated with the organisation. But that sort of really gave me the opportunity then years there to develop my beliefs around leadership, what worked, what didn't. They're absolutely huge in terms of where I am now, definitely. But the difference being now that it's more remote management, which again presents its own opportunities, its own obstacles. But the day-to-day management there, recruiting people, helping people move on, they're all things that shaped my values now, really.
Yeah, I just took something from that where you're having to deal with people on a continual level, and there might be people there who are a little bit unhappy about situations, and there's people in different contexts. You just touched upon your values. What are your core values then, and how did you then implement or try and bring those core values into the organisation, wherever you've been?
I'd say the first thing was it's like a people first sort of approach, and that sounds a bit cheesy, but particularly in South Leeds, we had to understand it tough. It was really to do. You had to be very innovative to engage the pupils, and if you thought you'd done it well one week, thought right, I've made some progress. The week after, you tried the same thing again, and it backfired. So it was firstly understanding that how tough the job was for the teachers that were within my department, and alongside that, making sure that I was constantly there as for supporting them, and also understanding that they may well have come to the school as a stepping stone. So I had to give them the best possible experience and then support them in where they wanted to be on their journey. So the first and foremost value I'll probably have, and that's whether I'm coaching or teaching, is to find out about the person. And that's the same with pupils. Just what makes them tick? What do they want from what they're doing with it? Why are they at South Leeds? Why did you apply for this job? Where do you want to be in 2 years? And really supporting them in whatever way I can to do that. And I would like to think, if you spoke to the teachers, particularly that worked at South Leeds, I did help them in terms of just supporting them with interviews and the methodologies I had around teaching and stuff that I've led, and I see it regularly. I'm in touch with them all, that they've all progressed on to bigger and better things, which I would like to think I was part of in some way. So the first core value would be understanding the people, what makes them tick, where they want to go, and how can I make that, or how can I support them on that journey. I think it's absolutely huge that we understand that.
How important is supporting people to go on to do bigger and better things? Because obviously in a situation like you were in there, that kind of school sounds tough. It's a tough environment to be in. Some people might want to stay because of the culture you've created. Some people, more people I imagine, might want to jump ship and go somewhere else and do something else. How as a leader can you accept that you want people to go on and do that, and to not stay with you and build with you in what you're doing, in the team that you're trying to build?
I think it probably goes back to my own personal ambitions. I mean, I would say that I've been ambitious since the day I started at Boston Spa as a TA. I knew where I wanted to go in terms of teaching, and that was as far as I could, or as high as I could, as quickly as I could. And I think that if I'd have had a manager or a line manager or someone who I was working who would try to put a ceiling on that, I would have found it really frustrating. And if ever that sort of situation has occurred, I've found it really frustrating. So I've tried to draw my own experiences, which isn't always right, because again, that's my personal outlook as to how I would feel if someone was trying to make me stay. So, for example, I can think of one teacher, I won't name him, but I got on with him really well, brilliant, and he was really torn between this opportunity that was closer to home, did providing him an opportunity in terms of moving up the teaching ladder, as it were. The school we were in at South Leeds had given him 2 days of teaching on a non-PE subject, which he found frustrating, and I'd fought to make that only one as best I could. So it got reduced to 1 day, but he was still frustrated on them days. He was a shadow of the person he was normally. So I felt it was my responsibility for his own mental well-being more than anything to really support him in trying to get this role that had come up. And as you say, Lewis, he was torn. He was torn between being part of this journey we were on as a PE unit, a PE department, should I say, or to move on and push himself a little bit further in his career. And in the end, he went for the latter. But I think it's just drawing on my own experiences, and I didn't want to frustrate people. As soon as they become frustrated, then they're not part of the journey anymore. They're not on the bus. And the bus analogy is something, again, referring back to Mark Doyle's head teacher, he was massive on. And if you're not on this journey that we were on in trying to improve the school and the culture and the environment, then you need to get off the bus as quick as you can, which I do align with still now. I think if you don't want to be part of the journey, then, and the people you've got on this journey with you aren't the right people, then you're not going to get anywhere. I still agree with that now to this day.
You talk there about culture, Steve. How do you create the culture that you want within your team?
When I went to South Leeds, probably I probably did too much in terms of leading by example stuff. And I say leading by example, but I was doing things that I thought that were just to be expected of a PE teacher that a couple of the department probably had fallen out of the habits of doing. So little things like when I got there were very few teams, very little extracurricular. There were a few, I'm not saying there were none, but comparatively, I've come from Beckett's, which was half the size, maybe a third of the size of the school. And there was endless opportunities in a school where there was very limited facilities. So at first it was really leading by example. So this is how we're going to be working, or this is how I'm going to be working. This is the pace I'm going to be working at. These are the ways I'm going to be approaching teaching my lessons. For example, I encouraged anyone to come into any of my lessons and watch them across the school, not just in PE. And I wanted to show them how I would be working and what level I'd be working at. Then it was a case of, as referred to earlier, you're either in it, you're either with me or you're not. To be fair, I never had to use that line, you're either with me or you're not. People, I think, quickly realised that there was going to be some changes, not just because I'd been brought in as head of PE, but there was lots of changes across the school. So first of all, it was probably like leading by example. The first session I had, session before I actually started, I went in and just gave them all a piece of paper about what they felt worked well in the department, what they felt needed to be improved, what they found frustrating about the school, and again getting back to try to know them. And I remember after doing it, one of the PE teachers came up to me and said, "No one's ever asked me in all my years of teaching any of them sort of questions." And I went, "Well, I think it's important that we all have input." And there was nothing I implemented that someone hadn't suggested from someone in the team. I didn't say we're just doing this. So that quickly became a realization to them that they weren't just answering these questions or saying these things to me for nothing, and that I would act on them and represent them. And one thing that's led to is my time as a manager, and probably sometimes to my own detriment, is the fact that I do feel I've got my team back, for want of a better phrase. I will fight for them. I will fight for what I believe is right for the people in my team. And that happened when I was at South Leeds. It happens now as a manager at the FA. I feel that I do that well, and even off outside of school or my day-to-day job in terms of coaching, if I believe in something for my players, I'll do my best to get it from. And I think that in terms of if you've asked any of my current employees, I would say something along them lines, that I've got the back, which is important again, particularly in the environment that I've worked in.
Yeah, having their back is one thing, but if I've listened to you right before we started recording, you're a busy man. You work as a manager for the FAPE unit. You're the first team coach at Tadcaster Albion, a very prestigious non-league club in the north of England. And you also created what is Leeds' probably biggest or most successful junior team in North East Leeds Juniors with over 500 kids playing football. And you do all those three jobs now, currently, alongside one another somehow. Maybe you can tell us how you do that and what are the consistencies that you see in terms of how you lead all three of those projects or job roles or how you see those and what the similarities are.
Well, I suppose on the football club front, so yeah, well, I don't say unfortunately, I'm glad it's no bigger than what it is. I wouldn't say we're the biggest, but we're certainly one of them. I set that up when I was at uni, and why everyone I speak to generally asks me why did you set up your own club? And I think again it was just, I was coaching anyway, just some grassroots football coaching that I've been doing, and I remember I was like an assistant to this gent, again I won't mention his name, and then I thought this isn't for me, this isn't what I see as how we should be working with kids or the philosophy we should be teaching our players, which has changed over the years myself obviously. But I went and set up my own, and it was a team then. It wasn't a club, it was just a team, and a lot of the pupils went to Boston Spa. And then it just snowballed into what it is now, where we've got 500 kids, boys and girls, ages 5 upwards. So I sometimes have to just, I say, you call it a job, but that's obviously a voluntary role as well. But it is a full-time job. I've taken a bit of a back step in terms of managing it. I only coach my daughter's under-7s team now with my wife, which is on a Saturday morning just before I go to Tadcaster for a fixture with adults in the Northern Premier. So it's a bit of a contrast. So Saturday morning I'm running around pretending to be Shrek or whatever I'm doing, and then in the afternoon with the lads at Tadcaster. So the time management has become an issue as the club's got bigger, but I've just delegated a lot better, which I'm and in terms of areas I need to develop or I've needed to develop so leadership, I've not been very good at delegating. I don't know if it's a trust issue or just I feel I should do it myself or what, but the club now, we're very fortunate to have we've got over 50 volunteers who are really taking on more responsibility and managing to alleviate some of that for me. And then the coaching at Tadcaster is it's a new thing for me. I've always worked with juniors really, sort of like progressed to under-19s last year, and then got an opportunity given to me by one of your mates, Curtis Woodhouse, who ex-Sheffield United. He didn't know I was a Wednesday fan when he gave him the opportunity, ironically. And then Curtis moved on, and a good colleague and friend of mine, Paul Quinn, took over, and I stayed on with him. And that's just, again, a different challenge. But what I've actually learned most about that is the stuff that you do with kids, the teaching strategies I've used over the years, the stuff we've already talked about in terms of culture, finding out about individuals, is no different at that level than it is with my under-7s girls or with my year 8 PE session. The amount of things that I've been able to just transition over into that environment is remarkable, and that's been quite pleasing to see. And it's a message I've given to a lot of people who are thinking about doing something similar in terms of moving into adult football, senior football, particularly colleagues, ex-PE colleagues or people I know work in that environment, that it's nothing to be afraid of, because it's all the same skills and the same values and ethos and beliefs. It transfers over across all three. But in terms of managing people, the club one has almost become impossible, because I've given more ownership to managers, team managers, to recruit people, and then I'm adding people to WhatsApp groups that I've probably never met. And that's tough because I used to probably knew the name of every player and every manager and every coach in the club 5 years ago, which I can't do now. But I need to, like I say, I'm not very good with that delegating, letting go, trusting. So
tell us a bit more about the delegating things. And I know where you're coming from. Is it that anxiety that you might have? I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me and explain it if I'm wrong. But is it that you don't want to be perceived as lazy, and as if not, you don't want to do things. You want to get hold of them and do them yourself and show people you're working hard. But is there also some trust issues in that? You know, are you wanting to control everything?
You see, I wouldn't class myself as controlling, but actually, the more I think about the conversation we're having now, it's probably making me reflect on it a little bit. I still wouldn't call it controlling, and I'm definitely in my work now at the FA. I'm definitely happy to delegate, and to be fair, I don't even have to delegate because the calibre of people within my team and our unit have there's big years of experience teaching, the quality and the experiences they have. They're very innovative anyway. I give them a lot of autonomy to do things because in many areas they know a lot more than me. So it's not really been an issue there. But when I was at South Leeds, if you think back to when I started and I said, how did I inspire the culture? It was sort of like that. I did everything. And then, which in hindsight wasn't the best way of doing it, obviously. And I don't think, then I struggled to let go a little bit. And like say, probably a bit of trust. And I don't know if that had been put into me by what people had told me about the school or what. There wasn't really any pressure on me to get the department to any certain place, but I felt that I had to, and I wanted to have an impact, and maybe I tried to drive that too much myself. But I suppose it is. I suppose if you want to call it controlling, Lewis, we'll go with controlling. But I've definitely got better at it. But it's something I've always been aware of, that my delegating and trusting people to do it. The amount of times I've said to myself, if you want something doing right, do it yourself.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I'm touching on there. When I use the word controlling, I'm not suggesting you have to have that kind of impact around everything and that kind of control of everything. But it's more what you've mentioned there, is that if you want something doing and you know how it's done, oftentimes the easy option is to get it done yourself because you know. How do you find that line between something, that you want to delegate, but it's trying to get that information across in the right way that suggests, listen, I know I could do this myself, but it's also going to be really good for you to do this, and I can't do everything myself. Where's that line of, yeah, I do delegate, or actually, no, I'm going to do this myself? Where has that been for you? Because you've been really open there and told us it's something you're working on. So as you cognitively process these things you've got to do, where does that delegation come in, and where does it sit as something that you're going to do yourself?
I think particularly again coming out of teaching, the work-life balance and opportunity to reflect and think has been significantly more than it was when I was teaching. Coming out and working for the FA, they literally are. I remember when we first started, they were saying that we needed to designate time in our working week, because we manage our own diaries, to reflect and think on the week and take notes and really look at how you can improve and develop, which I know people say that in schools, but just the reality of it is you just don't have time. So when I came out of it, it's something that I've really focused on in terms of time management. So it's the first, imagine coming out from your timetable at school, you know exactly what you're doing, where and when. You know when you've got a staff meeting, you know when, apart from maybe the fixtures, the only thing other different for PE, but it's quite structured. And then come out and then you've got your own diary, knock yourself out. I'm like, what do you mean I've got my own diary? I'm like, you book it in when you need to. You've got to do this many days with the club, this many days with Leeds Beckett University or University level. Let's go do it. And I struggled with that. And I wasn't the only one who struggled with it. I think everyone who came out teaching struggled with it. But it did give me a lot of time to think about my work-life balance and what things I can say no to and what I couldn't. So first year when I wasn't in a management role, just getting my head around that, and then using that experience when I did become into a management role, that you have to say no sometimes to things, and that again is difficult when you want to do a good job and you want to please people and you want to support people and you want to support people on journeys. Sometimes it's really tough to say no, but it has to be done. So, and what you just said there, Lewis, actually is one really good way of not spinning it, but it's a fact that by providing these opportunities to other people in your team, it gives them that experience of doing that. And then in terms of going back right to the beginning of this conversation, I want to be giving people the opportunity to progress and maybe carry out tasks that isn't actually part of their day-to-day role, but will give them experience moving forward where they can refer to and say, look, I did this report for Steve before, which touched on this and this, which maybe they wouldn't have done previously. So saying no, learning how to say no at the right time for my own work-life balance, and also to provide opportunities for others.
It's very interesting, Steve, there, where as younger educators, coaches, we all tend to be in that pace setter leadership style where we really want to set the tone. And as we get older, we revert more back to a more democratic style. And I think that comes with experience. And it's certainly something that all our leaders that we've talked to have developed over time. I'm just going to take it back a step. And as a dad, I'm always finding that battle hard to the work side and the family side. What challenges that bring to you? You're having a family yourself and doing all your 3 different jobs that you've got.
Well, I had Frankie. My mum, the missus of Frankie, when I was 21. So when Frankie was born, I wasn't actually working in education. I probably for the reason that my wife fell pregnant and I might have panicked a bit. I took an opportunity at that time to work randomly for British Gas. They had like a quick fire apprenticeship course that would be done in a year, and you'd be qualified to fit central heating and stuff. And I think I just saw pound signs rather than anything. And then I remember being under a floor one day. I know it again sounds cheesy, under a floor one day. Like, what am I doing here? Like, all I'd ever wanted to be since the age I was 10. Since the age you could decide what career you wanted to be was a PE teacher. That's all I'd ever said. And came home and said to my wife, again, Frankie was born at this point, I can't keep doing this. And she's like, you just need to go to uni, and whatever the sacrifices we have to make to do it, because she was at uni at the time as well, whatever sacrifices we have to make to do it, which obviously mainly financially, we'll do it. And luckily I got a clearing place, and it turned out that I got into PE, and then I got on a PE course, did my degree, and then we are where we are now. But that, in terms of my career, probably if Frankie hadn't been born at that stage in my career to really make me think I can't be doing this long-term future and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with what I was doing in terms of the career and stuff like that, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So that coupled with my wife pushing me was really the reason I am where I am now. And then in terms of managing that now as a father, so my daughter's 7, my son's 14, and we'll be in bed till about 2 o'clock this afternoon. But my daughter's 7, and then I never took Frankie to school, never picked him up because I was teaching. I take my daughter and pick her up most days now. So in terms of the balance, again, I referred to the difference between working for the FA and teaching. And probably just something I've realised that it's not just because I work for the FA, it's just outside of teaching. People tend to have more flexibility. A lot of my friends have got jobs where they can pick the kids up and they'll do makeup hours here and everywhere, a lot more flexible learning, I think, working, should I say. I think this situation we're in now probably make employers realise that we can be more flexible with how we work. Obviously, again, that will apply to teachers. So the role I've got now has been massively beneficial in terms of seeing my kids, like I said, taking them working at school. But my wife would probably say otherwise, because as soon as she gets in, I'm off out the door to do a coaching session or something along my mind. She's a deputy head though, so I barely see her as well. So it all works out.
Yeah, teaching couples. Same for me, Steve. I barely see my wife. We like ships that pass in the night.
That's the phrase she uses every time. Like, she came in on Tuesday. Well, ships passing in wind, and like, yeah.
What I really love there, Steve, is that where you were under the floorboards and you had that moment. How important is it to follow your passions? Well,
that's exactly the point I'm making, really. I don't know if I've become, at that point of my life, probably around 18, 19, a bit disillusioned with education, and that's probably just down to the experiences I had, really. but I just moved away from the PE side. I mean, when I was at college, the highest grade I got were in graphic design. So I just sort of like just went with that as like I didn't really evaluate. I just thought, well, that's the highest grade I've got. I'll do something with that, which sort of contradicts obviously going to British Gas. But I'd worked as a graphic designer for the 3 years before that, and it was just always constantly niggling me. And it took probably my wife to really keep going on about it, saying you need to do it while you can and while Frankie's young and while his responsibilities aren't going to be what they are going to be in the future, to really do it. And I would say to anyone who's listening to this and watching this, just do everything you can to succeed in where you want to be. Because I would say my journey from that point was far from smooth. Something Lewis is aware of, and I know you are, Alan, from the conversation we had before this. But it was worth it, and I should have done it at an earlier stage. So if there's something you want to do, you've just got to pursue it. And I just got sidetracked, I think, by a bit of disillusionment with education. I didn't perceive myself as someone who wanted to be going to uni, and which was wrong. And just probably a bit of ego, arrogance, 18-year-old shadow of the person I am now. I hope.
It's that reflection though as we get older, and you look back on your growing up and the choices you made. Those choices there when you were being that graphic designer and when you were being the gas engineer, does it now make you more appreciative though, and does it really drive your core values as to you can reflect on, I was doing something I didn't enjoy and now I love it?
Yeah, definitely, because like I say, the journey from there wasn't particularly smooth. But I think even when I was a TA at Boston Spa, just being in a classroom, and not just, again, I keep referring back to it, people have always started thinking, it sounds really cheesy, but it's not. I remember being in lessons with particularly one of the lads who I was working with all the time. And I've been in Lewis's PE lessons, I've been in a few of the other PE lessons, and within a week of being in that job, I knew that's where my future was. I had to do whatever I could to get to that level as quickly as I could. And it was. I can think back on it now. I remember being in the change rooms. It wasn't one of your lessons, Lewis. I think it was. I won't say his name either. But just being in the change rooms and doing register and then going out, and it was a football lesson, ironically. And straight away, I remember coming home and having a conversation. To this day, I can remember it vividly. Going in and just saying to them, "This is what I need to be doing." Because also, you've got to add, if I'm brutally honest, that year was an opportunity for me to find out if it really was what I wanted to do. So you're working in a school, what I could have had an awful experience and thought, no, this is not for me. But another career ticked off. But it wasn't, and that was the real epiphany for me, that working in that school, working with them pupils and all the pupils in the school was my epiphany, and this is what I want to do, this is what I need to do. It was mainly the impact on people, and again working with them two lads who I referred to, the two lads who were both had varying levels of autism, if you look on the spectrum, different needs. But I formed a really positive relationship with them and felt I had a positive impact on them alone. And then that feeling of really supporting someone and having that positive impact is irreplaceable. And I would not want to be doing a job in whatever context without having been able to have that impact. If you think about the term, what gets you out of bed every day, that's what gets me out of bed every day. If I can do a course with 20 trainee teachers and they take something away that's going to make them teach higher quality PE when they start, then that's great, brilliant.
So linking onto that, you give us an answer there for what gets you out of bed every day. What's the purpose and your own personal vision that drives what you do on a day-to-day basis? What are you trying to achieve through the numerous roles you do with people, with sport, and with physical education?
I think it's around enhancing the experiences that mainly young people are having. So if you take the Tadcaster thing away from the roles I'm doing, that's more of a selfish hobby that I've got. That's different. It's a little bit different, but at the same time,
it's a selfish hobby that gives 500 and odd kids a chance to play football, all right?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't mean obviously. I'm more about the adults at Tadcaster. But I'll come back to that in terms of what we're doing in terms of opportunities for them. But if I go back to my point that I said I was a bit disillusioned with education. My PE when I was at school was we didn't have any fields. We got a bus on a Friday afternoon, drove to Adel playing fields. We did cross country and then played football for 5 years. So we didn't do anything else. One time, the PE teacher was mainly a rugby man, and he tried to make us play rugby, and that just ended in carnage. So he just went back to, you do your cross country. Soon you finish cross country, you play football. Now, obviously, you could say that didn't detrimentally impact me because of the career path I'm now involved in. But my vision is for everyone to experience high quality PE, and not just PE and sport, be involved, make choices at a young age that will influence them for life. And I think, and I say this to the trainees we work with and anyone I work with, particularly in the foundation stage of school, so your receptions and year one teachers, the responsibility on them is absolutely monumental, because they have to give them kids that first experience that is positive, that hooks them in and thinks, yeah, I want a bit of this, I want to be doing this, I want to be physically active, I want to be playing sport, I want to be playing these TIG games, I want to be a lion out, a Lion King chasing hyenas around. That's what we want, and that's what really is my vision, I suppose, is for everyone to experience that. It's naive of me to say that everyone will experience it, but to certainly increase the number of people that are receiving high quality teaching and learning, particularly in PE. And
it's an interesting point you made about, starting with your EYFS teachers and year one teachers, because more often than not, that they're the people that haven't got the training and the knowledge and the progress and development behind them in specialist subjects such as PE to actually give the kids the good environment and the good experiences that they needed to really crack on and push on. What's happening with that from an FAPE unit point of view, and how's the work with what you're doing helping that to change? Because it's a great point you raised. And if they have those negative experiences through Key Stage 1, it can be quite difficult to pull back.
It is. Well, one of my colleagues always uses the analogy with the teachers around, if you go to a restaurant and it's a bad meal, you aren't going back. And he uses it all the time. But if you strip that back to a child who may have maybe stood around in the cold, don't touch a ball and TIG anyone, isn't involved in the lesson in any sort of way, then naturally they're going to become disengaged. But in terms of going back to the original point of what we're doing at the FA with that, the main way of combating that is we have relationships with 68 universities across the country, and that predominantly that relationship stems from working with their primary PGCE students, or they might have skit students who they work with as well. And we go in there and we do, which is something I've led on actually, the early years element. I've led on the early years workshops that we've created, which again I've handed over to people and they've taken to different levels and put their own spin on. But it is something that's popular and something that's requested a lot from the universities, because even some of the people who are delivering the courses, unless it's an early years specific course, haven't really got the experience or knowledge around what PE could look like in early years. So we do a lot of workshops around that. We have an award called Primary Teachers Award we deliver, which is like a one-day course around teaching PE in primary schools. It's not a football course, and that's the first thing we introduce ourselves as, is saying we might have 3 lines on his chest and stuff, but this is not a football course, this is a PE, teaching PE in primary course. So we do a lot of work there with that, and similarly in the clubs that we all have assigned, we'll do workshops and we'll do mentoring, and everything I think stems from the first focus has to be around early years and Key Stage 1 for me, for the reasons I've already alluded to. So it's something we're heavily focused on. And in terms of the football side from the FA, which we're not so much involved with, they're very much around, they've got a philosophy of the England DNA around the foundation phase DNA around what young players should be doing. Should be dribbling all the time. We shouldn't be having coaches on the side saying pass, because they're not ready to pass, they're not comfortable on a ball yet. So there is a lot of work going on in terms of the FA, but education-wise, it's something I've really got stuck into. That's been my focus for area development for myself in terms of developing my knowledge around it. But it's been something that I've really focused in with everyone I work with, the teachers, the trainee teachers, the coaches, because I think if you get that right, I think there's like a misconception, should I say, that once a pupil is in year 6 in a primary school, that they're an adult. And I think if they get it right in Key Stage 1 with hooks, engaging people with themes, finding out what makes their classes tick, the same principle applies from age 5 upwards to adults. And if they can get that bit right, because if you look at teachers, like you just said, and the lessons they deliver in early years are unbelievable. So I've had my wife, for example, when she was doing year 1, she throws something in a massive ice block, and there were like footprints all over the classroom, and the kids come in and like, wow, what's this? And it just inspires them. And then for some reason, as they get to like Key Stage 2, it's like, oh no, it's all about stats. They're too old for stuff like that. Well, they're not. And I've done it myself firsthand. I've had teachers do it firsthand. It's just using them principles that we learn in early years around teaching PE, around it being fun. It has to be engaging. It has to be differentiated. Keeping them all the way through. So it's a massive focus of mine. Is the long and short of it.
And that sounds like some really worthwhile work. I like the idea of, you never grow out of fun. So true. If something's fun, you're going to enjoy it. It doesn't matter what age you are. And those Key Stage 1 experiences are so crucial. And the fact that, Alan and I, when you kindly invited us to help a couple of months ago, we had no idea that the FA PE unit did PE, not football. And I'm sure there'll still be a misconception that because it is the FA, that it is just football based. And to hear that you're doing something so holistic and based around curriculum needs and empowering teachers is huge. And I know that your webinars and the different workshops you've done have been hugely popular. And I hope that continues for you. It sounds like a great project.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing from them webinars that we did in terms of feedback that we saw was around people and going back to having an impact and why you get out of bed. So many people saying they've literally rewritten the curriculum off the back of it. They've totally changed how PE is going to be delivered in their school from September. They've removed the sport-specific elements in Key Stage 1 or Key Stage. They've gone to they've planned themes and hooks, and just then they're the game changers for me. So if someone comes on that series of webinars and that's the impact it has, that is a game changer, because that's potentially hundreds of children in one school getting a better deal than what they were getting before in terms of PE. So that's massive, and I think we've done some really good work in that space.
All right, cheers, Steve. We're just going to wind it in a little bit now. Could you start by just telling us what book you're reading at the moment?
I hadn't started a new one, but the one I finished about 2 or 3 days ago was Phil Jackson book, 11 Rings. I obviously inspired by watching the Chicago Bulls documentary. I thought it'd be interesting to get his ideas on, because he's been very successful with different teams, just to see what leadership techniques he used, which are very different to what most of us probably would use. Yeah,
the documentary was fantastic, how he dealt with all the egos that he had to deal with and the different situations. And we've talked about it on previous shows. How would you have dealt with Jordan and Rodman and them guys? What do you think, Steve?
I don't know. I mean, and the way he approached, particularly looking like his nickname as the Zen Master, and to propose things like that to characters like that, that takes a lot of courage in the first place. But to actually engage them in it as well. I know in his book he does say that sometimes they said they were engaging in it, but they weren't really. But at least they were humouring him at least, and getting involved in it for the team's sake of the team. Which that is absolutely unbelievable how he had managed to get people to that way of thinking. But I think what's clear from his book, that which probably isn't as clear in the documentary, is that it wasn't something that happened overnight. So when he was the LA Lakers working with Kobe Bryant, for example, that took 3-4 years really to get Kobe Bryant to realise the importance of the team. It took a long time. So he's obviously got incredible resilience and persistence. And one of the things I took from that was the repetition, just repeating the same message over and over again until as long as you need to, until it sinks in. But yeah, it was a real good read, and I've seen that there's another book he's done on just his final season with the LA Lakers, which might go into even more detail about how he managed that. So I'm going to be looking into that one next. But yeah, that's the last book I've read.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think I'll add that to my reading list at the moment. What's your 3 non-negotiables as a leader?
Initiative. People who are working for me need to have initiative. I don't want people coming to me with problems without solutions, and I think pretty quickly they realise that, and like I said, they might run something by me. I'm going to try this. That's fine. I'll always let them go ahead and do that. And that, I suppose, relates to the other one around bravery, to try new things. When we're delivering a course, try a new approach, try a different way of delivering again, try a different theoretical approach, see what happens. Because generally, particularly when you're delivering a course and the people sat in front of you and you're the FA, they assume rightly or wrongly that you know what you're talking about. So it gives you an opportunity just to try things, and the learners aren't going to know any different, and hopefully the experience they get will be no different. So bravery around trying new things, and ultimately working hard. I know that's going to be the easiest thing ever to say, but I don't think you can get anywhere without putting in the extra mile, doing the things that aren't on your job spec, aren't on your job description, that people won't tell you to do. You need to go that extra mile sometimes, even if it's for yourself, if it's for a colleague, if it's for a pupil, if it's for a player, whatever it may be. There's always going to be something that you have to be prepared to go that extra mile. So that is a big one for me.
Yeah, great. Yorkshire grafters, they're the best kind as well.
Yeah, it's obviously it's natural up here. I don't have to worry about
that. Lewis, last one.
Yeah, tell us if you were to give one recommendation to an aspiring leader, or your younger self, or even to your son, as a football player coming through the ranks and about to go into his GCSEs at school, what kind of advice would you give out if you were to give just one piece of advice?
Surround yourself with different ideas and different people, because I think a lot of the things I've already mentioned in terms of making decisions not to go to university or college or various things throughout my career is because I was getting the same voices saying the same things, giving me the same, and you become a product of your environment. And I know that in one of the books I've read by Matthew Said, it talks about echo chambers, and I thought that was huge, because like you just hear the same thing over and over again, and you become a product of that environment, which I think is what happened to me. So I would certainly suggest that you surround yourself with as many different people. I don't mean in terms of necessarily diversity in terms of race or ethnicity. I mean diversity in ways of thinking, diverse thinking, and listen to all their opinions, however far removed from your own they may seem. You probably take something from it that will help shape your future. So that would be my biggest thing to any aspiring leader, is surround yourself with people who will give you different opinions and views, which particularly in the team I've got now at the FA, as a unit as a whole, it's brilliant for that. There's so many people who will challenge and check and challenge in the right way. And I think that's really helped me develop as an individual. So yeah, that'll be my key thing.
Nice. Avoid the kind of excuse me, yes culture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and exactly one of those things that, you know, Alan's alluded to it a few times, that a perspective changes on as you get older. You know, certainly speaking from experience, growing up as a teenager, you want to be around people who say yes and who think that what you're doing is right, and you want to be telling them that that's right, and everything changes and turns on its head as you get that little bit older, and you realise that that's in no way healthy. You want those different opinions and somebody to tell you that you're wrong, or at least to check yourself a little bit.
Yeah, in terms of creativity and coming up with ideas as a team and stuff like that, it's huge. It's just I don't want to be coming up with something and going yeah. People think, well, why are we doing that? What if this happens? You need them people around you. So yeah, that's a big one for me.
Steve, thanks a lot for coming on. Really enjoyed that chat. Guys, search Infinite Leaders Live on YouTube and IGTV. Again, Alan and I are on Twitter if you want to hear our ramblings and opinions. We're also pleased to announce that we're on all popular podcast platforms now. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, you'll find us there. So please share far and wide. And we'd love it if you could subscribe and leave a review. The reviews and subscriptions help us get our message out to more people. Please share with colleagues and with friends and people who you think will benefit and find what we're doing enjoyable. Remember to visit theinfinitelearners.com too. In there, you'll find articles, webinars, and our weekly journal notes as well. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for listening. Ta-ra.
Thanks, Steve.
Guys, cheers.